I went back to the end of the Trevor Lawrence era. What do you think Clemson's record is against the SEC in that time?
Since when?
Since Trevor Lawrence left.
Oh, it's under 500.
So if I'm thinking about this right, they've lost the last 2 out of 3 against South Carolina, right?
Each team's won the last 2 on the road, if I'm remembering right. So, yeah, two out of the last 3.
And then they would have won the game before that. So we're looking at 21, 22, 23, 24. 4 games against South Carolina. So that's a 2-2 split. They've lost to Georgia twice. They beat Kentucky in a bowl game. So we're up to 3-4. Anyway, I went through the calisthenics. I've got 3-7.
That sounds about right.
They lost to Texas, obviously, last year. And who would be the other teams? I'm missing somebody in there. Tennessee in a bowl game.
Yep.
I came up with 3-7.
Yep. 3 out of the last 10 sounds right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what, if we're talking perceptions, this is a big game for Clemson. They've lost not just, 3 out of the last 10 or 7 out of the last 10, but they've lost 3 in a row. They lost all 3 against SEC teams last year. You got to do something to kind of change that narrative. If you go out and you lose at home in that opener to LSU, the narratives are just going to start about how Clemson can't compete with the SEC. They were overhyped coming into the season. So from a perception standpoint, this game's huge. But if you're just looking at getting into the playoff, I don't think this game means all that much. All you got to do is win your league and you're in. So it just depends on how you want to look at it. But, man, it just me personally, I think it's a game Clemson needs because if you start the season off losing another opener, that would be 3 in a row. You lost to Georgia in the opener last year. You lost at Duke the year before last. You'd be 0-3 in your last 3 openers. Not the way you want to get the season started, particularly – when you've made no bones about the fact that you've got national title aspirations. And if you look at what Clemson's going to lose after this year, it might be a little bit before they have those kind of aspirations again. It's kind of now or never when you look, towards 2026 and 2027. Maybe they get something put together for 27, but, they lose a ton off of this team after this year. There's going to be a lot to replace for next year. In my mind, it might be a rebuilding year in a sense, but this is a big one. You don't want to start out the season 0-1 when you think you've got a team that is capable of at least competing for a national title.
And this almost makes this game, if the season plays out the way we expect, more important for LSU than for Clemson, because when you say all you need to do is win your league, well, I think that's a little easier said and done for Clemson. Not that it's going to be a cakewalk by any stretch, but to say LSU go win the SEC, I think the odds are pretty well stacked against them. So they need a really good record to get into this playoff.
I've said the same exact thing. I think it's bigger for LSU in that regard because it's not, let's be frank, it's not quite as difficult to run through and win the ACC as it is the SEC. SEC's, a much deeper conference, tends to be the best conference year in and year out. Maybe not every single year, but more often than not. And I would expect it to be again this year. So, yeah, I think it's probably in that regard when you're talking about getting into the playoff, it's probably a game LSU needs more than Clemson because they're likely looking at trying to, or at least, probably have a better shot or see how I want to say this. Their path to a conference championship is much more difficult than Clemson. So they have a higher percentage of competing for an at-large bid, which a win over Clemson would certainly be a resume booster in that regard.